Hey, welcome everybody. It's another episode of. Are we echoing? We good?
I don't know.
All right. It's episode 37. If you guys are listening to this, you're part of the resistance. We've got, let's see, what is it? October 14th going live Wednesday night, guys. We're glad to have you all here. Ian, how you doing?
I'm awesome. Doing good.
It's been a long week. I'm a little uncouth after that week in the camping for Sukkot and all that fun stuff.
Uncouth. That's a fun word, I guess. Yeah, it was an amazing week. I had a great time. From what I can tell, most people had a good time. So, what's up, Kevin? I see you in the chat there. Anybody else want to say hello? Marla, Rin, what's up? So we had a pretty big crowd. This is our first year hosting, and we had 47 people. I think it was like 29 adults, 19 kids, something like that. That might be off a little bit. 28 adults. I don't know what the math is there. 47 people total.
All I remember was it was a lot of kids.
There was a lot of kids. Yeah, last week I brought up the fact that I prayed for a van full of babysitters to break down outside the house.
Yep.
Bring them to Christ and then babysit for free.
Next year we're going to do a sukkah that's like a pig pen, and we're just going to put the kids in there and let them run around in a circle.
Dude, as smart as the littlest ones were, they will break out.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Oh man, we have our hands full. Little genius escape artists. It's crazy.
Yep. Yeah, and for those of you guys that were heard last week, my father-in-law was cutting down a tree and it kind of kicked back and got him in the knee. He was doing really well after that. They went in, stitched him up. He didn't do any major damage. They were really concerned that he got into his kneecap. Like there's a sac of fluid that's there, and if you get an infection in there, it can be really detrimental. So they're really concerned about that. So we went back the next day and they did some tests on his knee and everything, and didn't do any damage, didn't hit any ligaments, didn't hit any tendons or anything like that. And it's like his MCL or something like that, or whatever is on the side of the knee. So yeah, he's good, and I'm sure he's a little sore. But he's a trooper. As soon as we got back, he's like, all right, I'm going to cut this tree down. He's definitely a mountain man.
That's for sure. Yeah, it was a crazy event-filled week. I'm sad that it's over.
Yeah, me too.
But at least we got to do it. I understand. Like I was listening to a few of my podcasts that I regularly listen to, and some of them are from Israel, and they were on lockdown. They still are. So I don't know how much of a festival it ended up being this year. I think maybe a lot of them were just camped out on the rooftops. It's usually a big deal. So that's, at least we were blessed with being free, right?
Yeah.
Man, one of the best parts of Sukkot is the fellowship around the fire at night. Well, pretty much all day if you can do it. But we had a lot of kids, like we said. But at the evenings when the kids were sleeping, man, we had some really awesome conversations that only are rivaled by the bonfire at the Take on the World conference.
Yeah, it was good.
It was pretty fun, man. There's a lot of really cool conversations took place. The one we're going to talk about tonight came up a couple different times, and we were able to discuss and break down, and everyone has their opinions about everything. So, and it was all, I thought, very, fairly argued from a lot of different angles. And so it should be really cool tonight. Tonight's episode is King Solomon, the royal bloodlines, and the Genesis failsafe. It's a pretty cool title. I think you guys are going to be pretty cool. You're going to be pretty impressed with what the failsafe is. I know it was just a cool thing to talk about. We're going to tie in some other crazy stuff too, like I'm going to tell you a story about Trump that only a few of you probably heard if you've been following this channel for a year, maybe 2 years, because it's been a long time since this video was up there. But
yeah, it's pretty interesting to see everything kind of coming together and falling into places, man. I'm just seeing more and more things just popping up left and right. I can't wrap my head around some of this stuff. But I mean, the biggest and most important thing is that regardless of what's happening or what's going on, we know that it all leads to God's plan and his timing. So that's the one thing we all have to keep in mind and remember. No matter how crazy, how bad it goes, we have to remember that God has this plan established, and he said that this stuff was coming 2,000 years ago, if not before, with other prophets. But we just have to not fall into fear, not fall into these delusions, and just we have to walk our walk like we were told to, and that's all that should matter. As long as we follow the word and we follow the Father, the rest of the stuff shouldn't matter whatsoever. And that's kind of the most important thing. But it is cool to see the signs and to see the things that are happening. And especially, I mean, we do have an election that's coming up, and that can be argued all kinds of different ways. And I used to be in the camp of our votes didn't matter, but after seeing what has happened on a local level for most of these cities, I think it's more important that we have, some governors and stuff like that aren't going to be putting us in lockdown or allowing, rioting and things like that in our cities. I mean, we can always debate the whole presidency thing, which I think was part of what we're going to talk about, because do we really have a choice in that, or is it picked for us? But as far as local level, I think we really need to get involved in that, because here in Indianapolis, they just passed a bill where they're going to put a city, like a council together that is going to oversee the Indianapolis Police Department. So it will no longer be the chief of police that is in charge of his people. It's now going to be a council of selected city members that are going to dictate police policy in Indianapolis. And that's a pretty scary thing, because you have you have no idea who these people are, what they're not elected to individuals. They're just going to select them. So they may not represent the bulk or
it could be mafia.
That could be whatever.
You know what I mean? I mean, the mafia runs things everywhere. So let's just say they could orchestrate, all these people anonymously or whatever to be on this panel. That's not good, man. That's on the ballot this year, or it's already?
No, it already passed. They just passed it a couple days ago. So I didn't even know anything about it until I saw everybody talking about it.
Well, I guess you have to move to Ohio.
Well, technically I'm not in the city, so I don't really have to worry about it. I'm right across the street from there. So
be safe here.
As long as I don't cross my street to the other side of the road, then I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So things are getting crazy, and I think things are going to get a lot more crazy as we approach. Did you see the tip stuff that came out? It was like tactical something. It was like a government thing. I'm going to have to look it up, but it was something that they put together in June of 2020. And it was what happens if Trump wins, or what happens if Biden wins. And I got to remember what it's called. I know somebody has to know what it is. It was like tactical something. It's for this like transition for the presidency. And it was like they tried a trial run, like they did these war games kind of scenario. And it was like, one of them was like, if President Trump wins the electoral vote, but Biden wins the popular vote, how they're going to handle it in transition. There's like 3 of the 4 of them were how Biden was, what they were going to transition if Biden wins, and then one was if Trump wins. I'm trying to remember what the name of it's called.
So I know what you're talking about, and I think that it's an organization, right? It's an organization called TIP or something.
Yeah, that's the acronym for it. I'm trying to remember.
Listen to this. You know who started that? Obama.
Yeah.
That's his thing. It's like an organization for transitional
transition integrity project.
Yeah, transitional integrity. Yes.
I'll read this off as I can pull it up here.
Yeah, I was talking about that a couple weeks ago on here. I just didn't say what it was called.
So this is what it says. It says, in the summer of 2020, TIP conducted a series of war game exercises. The scenarios examined by TIP included Game 1, ambiguous. The first game investigated a scenario in which the outcome of the election remained unclear from the election night throughout gameplay. The result of these three states are in contention, and the ballots are destroyed in one of the states, making it unclear who won that state. Neither campaign is willing to concede. Game 2, a clear Biden victory. Biden wins both Electoral College and popular vote. Trump alleges fraud and takes steps to benefit himself and his family, but ultimately hands the White House over to Biden. Game 3, a clear Trump win. The third scenario starts with an Electoral College victory for President Trump, 286 to 252, but the popular vote win, 52 to 47 for former Vice President Biden. In this scenario, Biden refuses to concede, convinces the Democratic governors of 2 states that Trump won to send separate states of electors to the Electoral College, encouraging 3 states to threaten secession, and convince the House of Representatives to refuse to clarify the election and declare Biden the victor. Game 4, a narrow Biden win. The final scenario explores a narrow Biden win where he leads less than 1% of the popular vote and has a slim lead of 278 electoral votes. The Trump campaign sows chaos, but Senate Republicans and the Joint Chiefs of Staff eventually signal that they accept Biden's win. Trump refuses to leave and is removed by Secret Service. So these are 4 scenarios that they have already ran, that they're already that they're already prepared for. But it says, conclusion in August 2020, the TIP released a report outlining its findings and recommendations. The report stated, we assess that the president is likely to contest the results of both legal and extra legal means in an attempt to hold on to power. Recent events, including president's own unwillingness to commit to abide by the results of election of the attorney general's embrace of the president's groundless electoral fraud claims and unprecedented deployment of federal agents to put down left-wing protests underscore the extreme lengths to which the president may be willing to go in order to stay in office. The report's intention was to inspire the necessary changes to ensure a fair election in 2020. The risks can be mitigated, and the worst outcome of the exercise are far from certainty. The purpose of this report was not to frighten, but to spur all stakeholders to action. So I just think it's really pretty interesting that they're already preparing, and in their eyes that they're preparing. All 4 of these were like a Biden win, and they're like, oh, we're gonna fight. It's like a call to arms, which is kind of scary because none of them are like have an allowance for if Trump wins legitimately. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the like Biden, like where he's going out and campaigning. The last one I saw, there was literally 8 people in circles in chairs. And that was all the people that were at his thing. And you see Trump's, and there was like thousands of people that showed up. So I'm really interested to see how, remember the 5th of November. I've been saying that for a while. I think we're going to see some chaos in the streets, honestly.
The last rally, I think Biden said it was he was going through and talking about how crazy it is and how we need change. And that's why he's really excited to be running for Senate. So he doesn't even know what he's running for. I mean, I don't know that. I think we have to stop talking about this election and the physical because it is a crap show. I mean, what we need to look at is the spiritual behind this, because that's what really is going on here. This makes no sense logically, none of it. And that's how you know. If you don't have discernment, that's how you know that something is messed up here. Which is it's exciting because this plays into exactly what we're going to talk about tonight with the you guys, most of you guys are fairly educated on here, and you're all familiar with that all the presidents are related theory. Hopefully we've got some viewers that are tuning in or that will tune in the future that are not familiar with this, because we're going to lay it out a little bit.
I have that video if you want to play it. I don't know if it'll come through.
We could try it. You talking about the one with the little girl?
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and screen share and we'll see if it works. If it
Let's
doesn't
see.
work, we'll edit it out, right?
All right, let me see if I can screen share. It'd be worth trying. We'll see. Where'd it go?
There it is.
All right, I don't know if the audio is going to. Can you hear the audio?
Nope. All right, not going to work. Unless you unplug your headphones or something and let that sucker play.
Yeah, I could do that real quick. Let me rewind it back here.
All right.
All right, here we go. Nope, that didn't work.
All right. Well,
I don't have any audio out of my
what it is.
out of my computer.
It is what it is. But anyways, we can summarize this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Figure it out. If you just type in all the presidents are related, you'll find a little short video about that. And
there was a third grade girl. I think she was about 9 years old, and she did a project over the summer where she was actually just starting with her genealogy, and then found out she was related to a president, and then started going through and finding out that all of the presidents except for one were related. I can't remember. I'd have to see on here which one.
I think it was John Quincy Adams was not related.
Yeah.
But if you can, I mean, that guy's like one of the first couple. So they got their system down after that.
So ultimately they found out that all of them are related. They're like second, third cousins, fourth cousins, once removed, all kinds of stuff. There's enough evidence there that, it doesn't matter. And we kind of knew this. I mean, when you look at, was the Bush and was it Romney? I can't remember who it was. Well, and both of them were part of Skull and Bones. They were, you literally didn't have a choice between the two, like, because both of them were part of the secret society, the Skull and Bones. And then when they were asked about it, it was like,
well, it was Kerry. It was Kerry.
Yeah, it was right. So I mean, it's always interesting and then this is just another level of saying that they're all related in some way. And then they're all related to John Laughlin, who was a former king of England who signed the Magna Carta. So it's just pretty interesting that you can tie all the presidents together, including Trump in this now. I tie all of them together and tie them to a king of England who gave us our kind of like emancipation. So it's really interesting when you go and look at all this stuff.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about that video is that the skeptics were saying that that's not true, that they're not related, but they were only looking at the father side. And this little girl did the mom side. And that's where she found all the connections. And so that's interesting.
Which, I still find that interesting because that goes, for one, in like the Hebrew kind of like Jewish, you get your religion from your mom's side, and then we look at the Messiah. The Messiah, his bloodline does not come from Joseph. He gets his lineage from David through his mother's side. All right, that's interesting that we're going to talk about that because I think we're going to find a lot of kings and stuff through their mother's lines.
Right.
So. Yeah, I don't know who. I mean, this all spawns kind of off of a thing a presentation I did for Take on the World, and I don't know who all in the group has seen it, so don't spoil it. But
no, you can't spoil it. Listen, I know what you're talking about. I saw your presentation. We talked about it forever, but you can't spoil it because there's so much here. There's so much information. I mean, you didn't even put it all in there. You probably got a whole another couple hours.
I do.
And it was already awesome. And then also, if you're familiar with Rob Skiba's work, you've probably seen a lot of that stuff as well. There's many other people that are doing the bloodline thing. And then a lot of people are educated through like the Illuminati bloodline research with I can't think of that guy's name. Who's the guy? Springmeyer. Springmeyer does the bloodlines of the Illuminati. Now, I don't know if I trust Springmeyer 100%, but there's a lot of information in there that is true. And
it's about as much as trusting like Dan Brown, but there's information there.
Well, there's a lot of speculation when it comes to occult stuff because a lot of people, I mean, I don't know, it's hidden for a reason, and we can't trust all of it 100%. I mean, if it parallels with the scriptures, then we have a better chance of it being true. But a lot of these guys, they don't have discernment when they're doing their big research, and so it is what it is. But I think it's, for a lot of people, it's more fun to investigate it from an evil perspective, just because it helps you, as far as like the Q map and stuff. Everybody's like wanting to tie. I mean, it's like a puzzle, and I think, I don't remember what show I was looking at or watching, but the guy says, like, maybe it was Utopia. The guy in there, Mr. Rabbit, said something like, it's human nature to only think about the next move, or to try to think about, to try to figure out their next move, the puzzle.
Yeah.
That's all we care about, and that's sometimes true. I mean, that's what getting trapped in the tree of knowledge is all about. I mean, everyone feels more comfortable the more they know about something, usually, right? Whether they understand it or not. If they've done a lot of research on something, it helps them to be at ease with the decision that they have to make. And the Bible talks about us having faith. So sometimes we have to be okay with not knowing why.
That was what he said. The white rabbit in Utopia is, he says, it's not like, what people want is not, happiness and joy and all this. Is, you want to know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And then he's like, do you want to know what's going to happen next? And they're all just sitting there. It's the best, like, like you always have this, like the bad guy monologue. It's the best one I've ever heard. You got like, it's like, I'm going to tell you, like, you guys have me strapped to your couch. You're not going to kill me because you want to know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. You know what? That illustration that you just said right there, strapped to the couch, and they're not going to kill you because they want to know what happens next. Have you ever heard that saying? You can't cast out the demons that you're friends with. Have you ever heard that before?
I have now.
Okay, well, I mean, so a lot of people make peace with their demons, right? And they're you can't cast out something that you are friends with. You can't be a friend of the world and a friend of God, and that's why it's important to, get that crap out of your life. But I mean, so many of us have vices, and so many of us have areas that we're like, well, it's not really that bad, I know a bunch of people that it's worse for them, so I'm not that bad yet. And also, I mean, we talked about before that the reason people study eschatology and end times stuff is they want to know how much time they have before they have to get serious. That's
how I was.
Yeah,
I wanted to see the signs, because then I wanted to, like, be able to turn around and say, okay, I got, it's happening. I can apologize for all the stuff, and it didn't work out like that.
I want to tell you guys, you have plenty of time. I don't think we're as close as you think we are to the end. I'm not going to really go any further than that, but I don't think that we're about ready to see a rapture, or we're about ready to enter the 7-year tribulation or any of that stuff yet. I think we have a lot more ahead.
I think it's close enough for us to take it seriously and kind of give us a change in our perspective on what we should be doing for the kingdom, because we realize we have a stay of time. We're reading through the Judges and an understanding that, like, God would raise up a judge, and the judge would be there for the people, and the people would follow God. And then as soon as the judge died, they would immediately go back to worshiping Baal and Moloch and stuff. And then that would have a stay for like 18 years. For some reason, it was like 14 or 18 years. It kept going in this cycle. And then God would raise another judge up, probably because it took him that long to have one born,
No, what's interesting is the 17-year thing is always comes up in 17 years. I mean, look at Joseph's life. He was 17 when he's thrown in the pit. 17 years later, he's a ruler in Egypt, and he saves his father and his brothers. And then Jacob moves to Egypt, and 17 years after that, he dies. The 17, I would take a guess that that's why they use the 17 for the Q Anon thing and their projections and things, because, the familiar spirits and the enemy, they see things, right? So they can give visions and they can give all this information to their people, right? And a lot of times that stuff is real close to being right on the money if God doesn't intervene, right, and change some things around. A lot of times they have the overall outcome different than God's vision, but sometimes the dates and everything, like for example, that Blavatsky prediction from the externalization of the hierarchy, where she was saying that in like 1917, 1918, when they were trying to do this big push for universal consciousness and everything, and they were saying that if it didn't happen then, because of the celestial clock and everything, that they would have another chance in exactly 100 years. And we're there, man. We're right there. And it started a while ago. So, I mean, we're talking like the election of Trump being right on the tip of that turning point, and the Q stuff coming out with the Great Awakening and watch the storm, or watch the waters, the storm is upon us, and that kind of stuff. I mean, we talked about Jonah a couple weeks ago, and this storm that comes into Jonah's life to make him turn around, right? I mean, the parallels with what's happening now are crazy. And it just could be that God is going to grant us a stay of execution for a few more years, because it's not his will that any should perish. And he also, I mean, we look at America, and we're in this bubble because we're free, and we're we call Facebook censorship, persecution. We're completely blind to the gospel. For the most part, we're all waking up now. There's a few of us that have been awake for a while, but for the most part, I'm speaking of the church in America, blind to the gospel, blind to the mission, and now they're being awoke from their slumber. God's not going to just end it right now, because that's not what he's about. He's going to give us more time, and it's going to be harvest time. Now, I'm not saying it ain't going to get worse from this point on, but I don't believe that we're about to see the bowls of wrath poured out or anything like that. I think we still have a few more years before all that. But man, if you're watching and paying attention, I mean, we're seeing, 5G, we're seeing the transhumanist agenda. We're seeing, where you can get CRISPR technology right now online, bring it home, and create your own baby in your kitchen on your own. I mean, you can make glow in the dark fish. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff right from your couch. So it's definitely getting bad, but I don't think it's bad enough. And I do think that God's raising up judges right now. Maybe they're already here. And, this whole, Sukkot and the new year and this reset and everything, we're not done yet. But I think 2020 for sure will be going down in the history books as, the turning point of a lifetime for all of us. And if we believe that we're the Joshua generation or the remnant in the last days, and that it will come to pass within our lifetimes, we probably got about 20 years, 30 years, something like that. If, the Lord tarries. I don't know that I might not live that long. A lot of us might not live that long, but I don't see why it's about to happen right now. I don't see it happening.
Well, I look at multiple different factors, and the one of them being the degeneration of society and how the occult has been working. So if you look at, I just said this the other day, if you look at from 9/11 to COVID-19 in 2020, it's 19 years. So you have 9/11, 19 years later, COVID-19. I think it's interesting, but I've seen this happen in cycles of like almost 20 years. It's like they wait for a generation. So a generation gets, to 18, 19 years old, and then they start and they do something. Then they wait for a generation to get voting age, and then they start something. So I've been watching a lot of the businesses and stuff, like we already talked about transhumanism. I remember them saying about 10 years ago that by 2030, Is your roof falling in on you?
I pulled it down. It was flapping, so I pulled it off.
But I remember them saying that by 2030 they would be able to start transferring consciousness into, robot beings, or whatever, storing your mental brain patterns or whatever into a computer by 2030. And so that's one of many. I know with some of the companies that I have worked for and stuff, they all had plans for build outs and stuff like that weren't going to be done until 2030. I mean, they're just doing a major roadway through my city that's not scheduled to be done until 2030. So, I mean, they have this goal for all of these different things that 2030 seems to be the deadline. And then I think we'll see something change or transition around that time. And then I personally think maybe another 20 years. I think by 2050 is, I don't like setting dates or anything, but there's a lot of interesting stuff that points to that. Not to mention a huge bunch of rabbis had just come out and said that they were in communication with the Mashiach in Israel, and that he was 2 or 3 years old. And I thought that was really interesting, because that within my timeline, if he's 2 or 3 years old in 2020, how old would he be in 2050? It would be 33 years old, which is, another mock aspect of Christ, if this is the Antichrist coming out of Israel. So I just thought that was really interesting. And the fact that they're talking to him at 2 and 3 years old, is a mock version of the Magi going and seeing the Messiah, when he was 2 or 3 years old. So I don't know. It's interesting to see and to watch a lot of this stuff happen. But regardless, we should still function like, Jesus is coming back tomorrow, regardless of whether it is tomorrow or it's 50 years from now or whatever. Because there's a lot of stuff that, Jesus himself said that his word need to be spread to the edges of the earth before he returns. So that's something that still functionally has to happen. So plus on top of the man of the sin being revealed and all kinds of other things. But, I think what we're seeing is preparation on the secular side is they're slowly edging people into this, you do what we say, you do this. Hey, we told you have to get this vaccine. I mean, all of these things is just been like one step after another after another. And the thing that I just try to tell people to be cautious about is crying wolf. If you cry wolf too early, then when it doesn't happen, then people are going to look at you and be like, well, this person has no truth in them, so why would I listen to them about Jesus or God or anything like that? So prophecy is meant for seeing the signs of the times as they happen, not foretelling the future. So that's why you shouldn't, be setting times and dates and stuff like that. We should be looking out for the signs. Says Jesus says, when you see these things, look up, because the time's drawing. He's coming back. He's drawing near. So,
what I was going to say is about this. Actually, I don't remember. I just lost my train of thought.
Well, let's go towards the prophecy aspect from both secular and we're seeing this even a split kind of division in evangelical, charismatic, and the HRC and TO. Like, there are people that are getting prophecies of different things about this president, and they almost seem contradictory, but I think that was one of the things that we really touched on. We had a really good discussion about how Christianity, how finite humans are, that we seem to pick this dualistic side where we choose one or the other. Like, for instance, predestination versus free will. People want to choose one side or the other. Why can't it be both? God's big enough to be able to give you free will and still be able to predestine from his perspective, see everything from beginning to end of your life and not affect your free will. So there's another thing about, like, I know just all of these divisions that we have these arguments for. Why does it have to be both? And I think this, or why can't it be both? I guess is what I'm saying. We limit God and say he's only big enough to be this, instead of saying that why can't God, like the Unitarian versus Trinitarian, why can't God be 3 in 1 and be individual? Because I think the scripts, the Bible says that. I just think a lot of people have a hard time understanding and believing it. So that's why there's division. But we see this with prophecy as well. Somebody might get a version of prophecy that may show an outcome if they don't repent. Some people may get one if they do repent. Some people may get a demonic version of it. Some people may be inspired by self-promotion or what they think is going to happen. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, Ian, and see where you're at, because discernment is key, definitely, on anything that has to do with prophecy.
Well, this Trump thing, man, I honestly, in the beginning, I've come full circle, because in the beginning, man, I couldn't stand having to vote for Trump, bro. Like, I just can't stand the WCW election that we're having. And I mean, even in 2016, man, because at the time I was working on a presentation and working on this study, going through and looking at the steganography and occult writings, and then also through technology and how they mark things. And I came across a lot of Trump stuff, and I came across a prophecy of Trump from the 80s that was given to him by Richard Nixon. And Nixon, for all of you that don't know, Nixon was heavily involved in occult stuff, and he was deeply involved in the UFO research, and from a scientific perspective, he claimed to be getting like messages from other worlds, specific codes and things that he wrote down on certain like different pieces of paper. He actually has a time capsule with a lot of this stuff in it. I think it's like a 5-page time capsule that he has hidden somewhere in the White House. And that's just a really interesting thing to think about. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the Nixon pyramid. Nixon created this pyramid. It's a anti-ballistic missile silo, but it's a massive pyramid, and I think it's in North Dakota or South Dakota. Let me know in the chat if you're familiar with that. You can search it on Google and you'll get pictures of it, but it's pretty fascinating. There's just lots of crazy stuff with Nixon. I mean, Nixon was involved in the assassination plot of JFK. There's just so many crazy things. And when I found this connection with Trump, it turned me off to him, man, because I was like, dude, this is nuts. This is like the white and the black checkered floor. This is the duality, the good cop, bad cop scenario all over again. He's not an outsider. He says he is, but he's not. We all know he's mafia, of some kind of mafia, because you can't be in real estate in New York and in Vegas and all these places without having connections to the mob. He's not a good dude. That's what came about pretty much. I mean, but then I realized, as the Lord convicted me, that we don't vote. We're not voting for a pastor. I don't have to follow this dude. I don't have to do any of that stuff. But what we vote for is, because we are here in this free country and we've been given this freedom, unlike any other country, we cannot afford to take it for granted. And America is really the focal point of bringing the gospel to the world. And if we get jammed up, then that jams up the gospel, because we're the last bastion of freedom. And so it does matter if you vote. I mean, and I think you're never going to find a perfect candidate, because we live in a corrupt world. And this is a very corrupt system. However, you have to choose between your spiritual convictions. I mean, you look at the two and you think, okay, one's pro-choice and one's pro-life. That's a pretty good marker. I mean, for most of us, that's if you get rid of abortion, you're saving 44 million babies' lives a year. That's good enough for my vote, regardless of all the other BS and all that stuff. But
well, I don't know that Trump is actually going to do much about it. Hopefully the Supreme Court justices that he brings in, we'll do something about it. But I definitely know that if Biden gets in there, he's already said he wants to take away our guns. He wants to take away our freedoms. There's different times that he said things, and he said that he wanted to push for support for Planned Parenthood. So, and Harris she's backed by it. They donated like $200 some million or something to her campaign or something.
Another thing that Trump has going for him too, when you look at it from our perspective, is he loves Israel, man. And there's prophecies all over the scripture that talk about if you
bless Israel, you'll be blessed.
You'll be blessed. Yes. And we know that's not just speaking of the nation of Israel. That's also speaking of God's people. And Trump loves the underdogs. And he's, I don't know what people think, but Trump, he definitely likes Christians. And I'm not saying he's a Christian. I don't know. I would like to hope he is. I've heard lots of testimony that he is. I'm not the guy that's going to tell you that I don't believe that. I don't, I'm not going to say that, but I hope and pray that he is. And I definitely believe that God can use him even if he's not. And I think that when you're voting, you need to look and see who's got the most potential for what God's going to do. And Trump is definitely the one. I mean, and a lot of people will be like, well, if we vote for Trump, he's going to put in the Temple Mount thing and everything's going to happen. Yeah, guess what? It happens no matter what, because it's in the scripture. It's in the prophecy. It's in Revelation. I mean, this stuff happens. So, at some point it's going to have to happen. So let's just not worry about that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, what are we going to stop the Messiah from returning? We should be happy, we start seeing those things happen. If they do build a third temple, we know we're close. I mean, this is what we were talking about a lot at Sukkot, was the Antichrist doesn't come to power and install all of this stuff. It's already installed before he comes to power. He's the capstone to the pyramid. So they've got to put all of these building stones up before he gets into power. And when he steps into power, they already have everything set up and ready to go. We saw this with like Facebook and social media and Google, and how they're wanting to limit everything. They're narrowing the internet down to where there's not truthers. There's no multitude of information. You get one answer. This is what they're working on for that process. Then we know 5G has to be rolled out. That has to be set up, though. You have the COVID tracker was just like the rollout, the testing of it. They've already been tracking us with our phones, but they want real-time tracking, ping to your location with direct beam technology, 24/7, knowing exactly where you're at, what you're doing through your device. If not through your device, then through something in your own body, which is something else that COVID has really kind of stepping stoned us towards, is putting something in our body that they can track and trace. So they're building these steps up to the pyramid. One world monetary system. We've talked about Nasara and Jassara. We've talked about Bitcoin and all this other stuff that has the potential to become. I think that they're kind of just biting for who's going to make it to the top of the pyramid with a lot of these. And then once they get into place, and once they've locked it into place with all of these different things, one world religion, one world monetary system, one world government, 5G tracking, smart cities, tearing down of the human police department and reinstallation of, drones or whatever they're going to move towards, like the dystopian future you see in like Demolition Man and all this other kind of stuff. Like that's what they're trying to push for. They want control, unlimited control without the human element. And then as soon as they can get to that point where they've set all this up, then they'll have the Antichrist be the top piece of that pyramid. That's what that all-seeing eye is. But everything else is established for him. So we're going to have this time period of where we're going to see all this stuff set up and established before he steps to power. And I think that's what we're seeing. And everybody's, spider senses are going, oh, that's not good. That's not good. But the thing is, we're just at these levels where they're just starting to institute this stuff, or they're building the precursors for them as they're building the whole system. So we definitely have to keep our eyes open. And you're not wrong when you're tingling, your senses are tingling, but is it the full rolled out version of it? Or is this just something that they're testing the waters for? That's their trial, their beta for what they're going to roll out. They're seeing how people are going to react, how many people actually, listen or succumb to, the propaganda or whatever that they're pushing out there. I think that's what we're seeing. And then they'll just delay it. If not, that we've seen this time and time again. If they don't get enough people under the belt, then, then we'll be looking at some genocides or something crazy happening, where they start limiting it, or, limiting the people down and to a controllable number. But,
right. Yeah. And I mean, so, all right, let's go back and talk about this Trump prophecy, because we got about 10 minutes left in this hour, this first hour here. And so, all right, I'm going to start with everybody's familiar with Tesla. Tesla's a heck of a guy, right? He did some crazy things for science, man. And a lot of them were from automatic writing sessions and different seance type things. But the dude was super smart, right? And he left when he was killed or died or whatever you believe. The FBI confiscated all of his work. Okay. And the guy that so when the FBI confiscated the work for the U.S. government, this was right at the same time that they started the Majestic 12. So the Majestic 12, the UFO hunters, were run by Vannevar Bush. He was the head of science and technology for the U.S. government. And his protege was John Trump, which was Donald Trump's uncle. So he's connected to this whole aspect of the tech world and the behind the scenes alien connection, which we know to be Nephilim entities or demonic spirit realm contact. And so he's already had this insight into technology of the future from a young age. And there's a reason for that. And the enemy knew that as well. So back in the 80s, actually before the 80s, there's a painter. I don't know how to spell this name. I can't. Dutchow is his name, or Dulchow or something like that. An old painter who painted this series of paintings called the 4500 series, his 4500 series. And in this painting, or in the series of paintings, there are abstract art stuff, and it has to do with the Sonora Air Club and all these different UFO secret groups and things like that. But he painted these abstract pictures of ancient space flying machines, and on one of them it has the word Trump, or the name Trump. And remember, this is like early 1900s, like 1910, something like that. So the word Trump comes up in the 4500 series paintings. And this guy's an occultist as well, dabbling into some different things. But see, what I'm trying to get at is you're led by spirits no matter what you think. Either you are being manipulated from the dark side, or you have discernment from the Holy Spirit. One way or another, you're doing things, whether you like it or not, you're being manipulated. So this guy obviously had prophetically painted some things that maybe he didn't even realize. Maybe he did, but the 45th president, Donald Trump, was painted in this painter's rendition of the 4500 series. I just think that's cool. That's a weird thing, right? So then we move to the 80s. There's a little bit more other different things that can go up to, but I'm going to go to the 80s. And so in the 80s, Nixon, his wife, was in a dream club with a well-known mystic to the stars and to politicians. And I think she served under like 3 presidents or 4 presidents. So she's an astrologer, mystic, diviner, or whatever, that worked in and with presidential campaigns and administrations. So if you don't believe that the presidents have these type of people working for them, just go read some history books, because almost every president, every king, somebody has these wizards that they consult with. It did not go away, after the Middle Ages or whatever. And it's not like John Dee was the only one. But so this lady's name was Pat Dixon. Jean Dixon. Pat Nixon was Richard Nixon's wife. She was in a dream club with this lady, and I guess she had a vision one night and called up Richard Nixon, and he was the president at the time, and she said, Donald Trump will be president someday. You should get close to him. We predict that if he runs, he will win. And this was like 1984. And the interesting thing is Donald Trump had been friends with Nixon for several years, but at this time he was not the Donald Trump that you know of. Like, he's not the guy that has Trump Tower or any of that stuff. He was literally like in his 30s. He's a rich kid. His dad was rich and he had his dad's money. He didn't do anything yet until after this. But he had eaten with the president. He'd had like multiple meetings in the White House with Nixon. And then Nixon actually sends him this letter. And it's called the Nixon letter. So you can Google that and you can find it, because Trump references this letter when he's inaugurated and says that he has it framed on his desk in the Oval Office. But that letter was pretty much a prophecy that Trump would become president when he decided to run. And it was 35 years or something after he got that letter that he ran for president and won. So it's interesting with his connections to, being let into the secret side of the.
I've got that there if you want to see it.
You got the letter?
Yeah.
There it is. Let's see here. You were great on the Donahue show. As you can imagine, whenever you decide to run for office, you will be a winner. Sincerely, I don't know if that says Richard or what.
Dick Nixon.
Dickie. Yeah, fascinating, isn't it? I mean, this is like a whole nother side. So now when you see, most people never heard of this. And most people are familiar with, like, what was that guy's name with the mustache? Something Taylor? The Christian guy that prophesied that Trump would be president and the blood moons and all that stuff. I can't remember his name. But he's been on all the sideshow Christian media channels, right? 700 Club, all that stuff. Talking about him prophesying that Trump would be president. God showed him in a vision and all that stuff. Well, you see, Trump knows he's chosen. From Mark Taylor. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, guys. Trump's known he's been chosen for this for a long time. So here's the deal. Everybody knows that God has a plan and a predestined, future for you, right? He's chosen a path for you to take that is preferred, and it's up to you and your free will whether you hit it or not. So God has big plans for us, right? And the enemy is always trying to interfere with that and get us to choose the wrong path or co-opt us, because he knows that we've been given certain giftings and abilities and position and different things like that to facilitate the mission that God called us to. And when he can interrupt that, he can take that, right, for his own purposes. So there's a big target on these people, and ultimately God wins. But I find it, I think it's interesting to, I try to put myself in Trump's mind and think about what it would be like to be chosen to do great things. And then 30 years later, you hit that mark, but then you're confronted with God, and God says, I put you here. I did these things, right? I mean, I really feel like he's probably had this encounter already. I mean, and it's humbled him a little bit. And because I feel like he's toned down, and he's been caught off guard a million times in this election. And you can see he surrounds himself with people that they're not good. So you're like, it's like, I feel like he doesn't know what's going on sometimes, man. And he's just blindly putting people where he needs to put them. And I don't know if God's telling him to or not, because in the end, this corrupt scheme would go down, and, all this stuff would get exposed. because I truly believe that there's about to be some kind of massive awakening or some type of event that is uncovered, like another Snowden or something.
Have you seen the video that was just released like 2 days ago with the Benghazi betrayal?
Yeah. So here's the thing about this. So I'm glad you brought that up, because some of that information is true. Some of it is not. Here's the deal. There's a guy that I follow named Mike Moore, who is the editor of True Pundit. He wrote a book 2 years ago called How I Dismantled the FBI in My Pajamas. And he's the first investigator to come up on this story and uncover this plot with Iran and all that stuff that they bring up in there. He put it in his book, and he got thrown in jail by the FBI. They got him. They did all this stuff, like they Roger Stoned him, but he's not a Roger Stone. He's just a dude, right? And he ended up getting out. He was on house arrest for a long time, but like, you can read this book, and it's super fascinating. But you can listen to his podcast. He has a podcast called More Pain, and he goes by Thomas Paine. That's his. But it's a True Pundit. But he came out and talked about this in 2018, and he was saying that he didn't say that bin Laden was a double, but he said that they lied about it, and they killed SEAL Team 6 to cover it up, and there was payoffs going to Iran, and he has interviews and everything with these different people involved in the book. Now, I find it interesting that this Falconer guy, right? His name's like something Mauro Perot, and he looks like some kind of freaking weirdo with a turban on. He's wearing pajamas.
Well, he spent 20 years in the Middle East.
He's supposedly a high-level intelligence operative that had all these things recorded. Now, my problem is, if you have all this stuff recorded and you're putting it out on, why don't you freaking put out a recording or some kind of damning evidence? This is another limited hangout. I'm not saying that the information's not there and that this isn't a real thing. I just want to know why everybody's stringing everybody along with the Q stuff. Q is the longest thing where they have not produced one bit of evidence for their plan. Everything's part of this plan. They say, wait for it. They never show you anything. This guy comes out and says he's got all this stuff on file. There's all these people that have seen it. He's giving it to a congressman who he's not going to name, and it'll all be here soon. Why the heck have you had it for 10 years, 11 years, and not one thing has come out? You haven't put out one bit of evidence. It's just, see, it's not new information, because I already knew this like a couple of years ago. Here's the other thing. Out of all the people that you know of that do media stuff, right, investigative journalism and all that stuff, there's a lot of big time names that are very credible, that tell the truth, that get, crapped on by the mainstream. Why do you do two brand new people to bring this out? Why do you find some girl that can't even, she's really pretty. That's part of it. They find the really pretty girl at some kind of random conference.
Yeah, well, she was at AMP, and she
Right.
has her own channel, and they reached out to her to help her put.
Yeah, she's also from Survivor, bro. She's from Survivor. She has an IMBD. She's an actress. This whole thing doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand. You know what I mean? I hope to God it comes out, because I know it's true. There's a lot of truth to it, but the way they're doing it is bullcrap, and it's fitting the same pattern of Q. And if Q's the new standard, we're never going to get truth from anybody. And remember how they were saying this could be the October surprise that we're waiting on? They're trying to say that Obama used this kill mission of he knew where he was. He knew where Osama bin Laden was, and he saved it so that he could use it for the October surprise in the election. Now this guy's saying they're saving it. He's known about this for 11 years, and they're saving it for Trump to use it as the October surprise. Do you see a problem here? You know what I mean? It's like nobody cares about putting the truth out unless it benefits them in the moment, right? So I don't know. I mean, to me, this is just another handful of garbage that's getting thrown out into the pile to confuse everybody, so that we're not really paying attention to. I don't even know what we're supposed to pay attention to anymore. There's so much crap out there. It's like, what do we focus on at this point, But my point behind the Trump stuff is God had a plan. God is getting to this person, right? He speaks to you whether you like it or not. You're on this journey to destiny, and you're going there whether you like it or not, right? If he chooses you,
you're going there, right? I mean, so you look at Trump, and we're supposed to be praying for this guy, man. He's got incredible. I don't know if he knew what he was getting into, but he's there now, right? So we need to be praying for him because, it's really important that he hears from God and does the right thing. And I think you're going to find this next piece here, how this links in with why these prophecies are coming true, regardless of, the credibility of the people that are given the prophecy and if the whole thing came true or whatever. But this divine right of kings, right? How we talk about all the presidents are related and this is a scam, and all the rulers of the world are family members, and we don't really have free choice. And it's always, we get to pick one or two, but they're both related. So we get the same, family in there. There's a reason for that, right? We've already established this, and the occult would say it's the Solomon, the seal of Solomon and all these different things that they use to back up their genealogy, right? They're all descendants of Solomon. And the Christians use David, which is the same thing. It's the same thing. Solomon was David's son. We just, we each have our way of telling the story. So go into it, Aaron, because this is pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can start off with where the occult, like the elites, like to follow their bloodline, the dragon bloodline. They kind of hinted on it a little bit with the Dan Brown books. If you remember those, Da Vinci Code and stuff like that, where they believe that the concept of the chalice or the Holy Grail is actually the bloodline of Christ. And they believe that Christ married, this is like a Merovingian, Templar belief structure. We're talking Masonic belief structure that there was a lineage of Christ. He didn't actually die. He was actually procreated, and they hid his child and all this other stuff. And that became the Merovingian bloodline. There is some truth to that divinic bloodline, but I don't think we as Christians understand that it didn't come from Jesus. Jesus had one purpose, and it wasn't to get married and have kids. He came for the Israelites, the chosen people, and he was to die, to be the sacrifice for all sin and atonement in his death, burial, and resurrection. So he didn't have any purpose to need to have kids. He fulfilled everything he needed to do in his 33 years of his life. He didn't need to procreate and continue on. So we don't see that when we look at the biblical scriptures. So I always say when you're looking at pagan lineage or mythology, it's like a 2,000-year-old game of telephone where things change. Like somebody tells you, hi, I'm riding on a horse. And by the time it gets down through 2,000 years, it's somebody says, bye, I'm leaving on a donkey, because it's completely been rearranged and changed, but there's some similitude there. So we have to use the Bible as our focal point, and everything else is kind of remote. And we have to compare and contrast to the Bible because we know that it's truth. Everything else is what's kind of been fuzzy and scattered on the outside. So I do think that we see all of these presidents, we've known that there's been this bloodline. You can even look at the history and genetics of kings all throughout Europe, going all the way back. That they were known to interbreed, and there were a lot of genetic problems and stuff that were happening. They were trying to maintain a specific bloodline, and I think we as commoners are just now starting to get this understanding of genetics and stuff that they've known. Madame Blavatsky was putting this stuff back together with these bloodlines and Rh negative and all this stuff 100 years before we even, actually it was like 60 years before we even knew the difference between blood types. She was able to pinpoint people and say, this is the groups of people we need to be looking at. So there's a lot in the genetics that we need to be paying attention to. And there's a lot of stuff like in America, we're so abstract and taken away from like our concepts of our blood and stuff like that. You look at any of the Asian countries, they look at their bloodlines like it is our, Aries, Pisces, they base their lives, their jobs, their relationships on their blood types. And in America, we barely even know our blood types. So it's really interesting. But I think they kind of keep us ignorant in that aspect because they don't want us to know our history, our lineage. They want the United States to be a melting pot, but they don't know what a melting pot is. Like melting pot, I believe, came from the origins, the Mesopotamia, like where the promised land was. We all originate at some point from there. But when we're talking about these bloodlines, I have a long thing about this bloodline from Adam to David. But once we hit David and once we go on to his son, it gets really interesting. David, we look at David and we know the story of him, like, pursuing after, a woman, having her husband killed and stuff like that. But David had multiple wives. I think I wrote it down. I don't remember the exact number, but he had a ton of concubines as well. I know Solomon, in particular, had 300 wives and 700 concubines, if I'm correct on that. I got the slide right here. I'll pull it up so I can make sure. It says David is recorded as having 7 wives and many concubines, 19 sons and 1 daughters, with a possibility for many unaccounted for children from concubines. King Solomon, King David's son, was the successor, had 700 wives and 300 concubines, which included a Pharaoh's daughter, women of Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and of the Hittites. Solomon had 4 notable children and possibly many uncounted for children from concubines. So it's interesting because those 2 right there, if you look at why Solomon was not able to do what he was supposed to do, he lost his covenant with God because he started marrying all these pagan women. And so that's kind of one of the interesting things that we start seeing. These pagan women came from all over the place. If I can find the other one of the really interesting ones was all the list of the celebrities that we know were RH negative was tied to this line. And that one of the very interesting ones was named Haile Selassie the First. He was the last emperor of Ethiopia, a direct descendant of the House of Solomon through Queen Sheba. So this is what the Rastafarians believe is the last king of Ethiopia or the last king of Africa. And he has a direct lineage, recorded history, all the way through Queen Sheba, all the way up to the House of Solomon. So it's interesting that we see, a king there. And then we see all of these other people, like Dan Aykroyd, Ted Bundy, Al Capone, inside of here that we know. Gerald Ford was RH negative.
Jimmy Carter.
Jim Henson, Jenna Jameson, Janis Joplin, John Lennon, Bob Marley, Steve McQueen, Marilyn Monroe, Jim Morrison, Jack Nicholson, Barack Obama, Ozzy Osbourne, Regis Philbin, Gavin Rossdale from Bush, Susan Sarandon, Britney Spears, Peter Steele, Sharon Stone, Meryl Streep, O.J. Simpson, Nikki Taylor, Tim Tebow, Donald Trump is RH negative, Lana Turner, Charles, Prince of Wales, and then again back to Selassie, who was the line of Sheba. So this is just in a quick search of people that I could find that were RH negative, and we have multiple presidents, and we know that the presidents are related. And you have a direct lineage that goes all the way back to Queen Sheba. So to me, this was really interesting that we started seeing all of these kings and all of these popular people. This is why I think the assumption for the RH negative always went into the dark, is because people would look at it and say, well, they have to be Nephilim because all the stars of Hollywood are. But I know if I ask a question in this room, because I know that after I did my thing for the conference, I had tons and tons of people hitting me up saying, my wife is this, is RH negative. My son is this, is RH negative. My mom was whatever. And these are people that are in the Christian community. I myself, my sister's RH negative, which means we think that my dad's mother was RH negative. My wife's father is RH negative. Just in my little, family, we have 2 people that are extremely close that are RH negative. So what I'm seeing in this is it's not just like the Nephilim bloodline. So I had to track this all back. And then I found the whole concept of the Abrahamic covenant with God. And let me find that real quick. And in the promise to Abraham, I found something that's really interesting. I think this is the right one.
That's it.
It was said that about
17 at the bottom there, the bottom paragraph.
Okay, yeah. So it says, "Behold, my covenant is with you. You shall be the father of multitude of nations. No longer shall you be called Abram, but you shall be Abraham. For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. Will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me, you, and your offspring after and throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be your God and your offspring after you." So this is an everlasting covenant that many nations would come out of Abraham, and the kings shall come out from underneath of Abraham. And when we see, you go into the future and you see what happens with Judah is given the staff, which means the kingship. And it says it shall never pass between your legs. Now, Judah, it had the whole story of Tamar. If you're not familiar with it, Judah had 3 sons. Tamar was married to one. He dies through a Levirate rule. His brother was supposed to sleep with her and give her a child. He fails to do so and dies. So she sneaks off after Judah's wife dies. He goes to like this Vegas scenario and tries to hook up with a prostitute. Well, Tamar dresses up as the prostitute, has intercourse with Judah, and is given twins. One of those is Perez, the direct line of David. So we know from Judah that it says that the staff of power of ruling will never pass between his thighs, which means it would, through his generations, it would never leave Judah. Judah will always be the king over the people. And it goes down through Tamar, through Perez, to David, through Solomon. And then you have to look at what happens after that. After Solomon, there's a whole dividing of the 10 tribes from the 2 and the scattering of the 10 tribes, which is us. And Judah was still the ruler over us. And I believe that following that bloodline is where we see all of the kings of the earth today, why they're all related, and why all the presidents are related, is because it was a promise given to Abraham that the kings would always rule over us, all the way down through Judah, through David, and through Solomon, and their multitude of wives and concubines they had with pagan nations is why we have pagan rulers of the world today. This was prophesied to Abraham thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the most of it. I mean, there's a lot more to go into about, that backs that up, but that's the kind of basic coverage of it.
It's crazy, man. So you're saying God is a covenant keeper?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't lie when he said that. And he said that the multitudes would be all of the nations, or the term is ethnos or goyim in the Hebrew, and that means that was all of the ethnic all of the ethnic division that we talk about and stuff. We're all scattered and spread out and intermingled between each other. We're all children of Abraham at some point, because to me it's all about genetics. God says the life is in the blood, right? And then how many times did Jesus say that I am the way, the truth, and the life? There's something about our genetics that we share that I believe is through the line of the Messiah. And that's why we have the calling that we do. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, but it's also interesting though, that our rulers and the people in power, God's, like we looked at Revelation 17:17, where God says that he's the one that is changing the hearts of the leaders to give their power over to the beast, and to give up their power and give it over to the beast. We also saw this with Ahab, when God was trying to get to Ahab and like really trying to put one over on him. And he goes to his council and says, I need to do something with Ahab. And one of them steps up and says, I will go to him as a deceiving spirit, and I'll go and I'll convince him and change his thoughts. I think it's really interesting when we look at our presidents and stuff like that. Like we look at what happened within Egypt. You have the Pharaoh whose heart was hardened by God, so that it would show the glory of God through everything that he was doing, and the destruction of their kings would not have happened if Pharaoh just from the first go was like, okay, I'll let you guys all go. But God was trying to show himself. All of the plagues of Egypt were to destroy one of the gods that Egypt worshiped. God was showing his power. So he had to harden Pharaoh's heart. This is why we see things with some of these kings. We're like, well, how could they possibly do this? Well, they have to have this heart in this place where it's at, so that God's will and his goal for all of us can be fulfilled. So it's just really interesting. I think it's a very detailed and intricate thing that it's hard for some of us to grasp. Like when I saw this, I was like, man, this just blows my mind, right? Like we were all like looking at this as, well, do we vote this or this? And we always wonder why it doesn't matter who we seem to vote for. And then I realized that it's all God orchestrating all of this stuff. Now, of course, man always has free will, but God can work beyond a man's free will. And God judges us based on the gifts that he gives us. So if he gives a gift down a line of people to be kings and they fail, or they are damaging to the people, or they ruin people, or they, for instance, they get involved in hot dogs and pizza, right? They're going to be held accountable to a level that we aren't, because they were given the power to be in that position in the first place. And what they did with it was to ruin little children. You don't think God's going to put the smackdown on them for that? Absolutely he will. But he's not going to take them from power because of purpose for them. But he will judge them by what they do with that power. And I guarantee you, when they go astray, there's a heavy set judgment for those people. I mean, the Bible says it'd be better to have a millstone strapped around your neck. So don't think it would be more so for somebody who is in power, who has the ability to do those kind of things. But it does not mean that they're not in that position for without purpose. God is definitely involved in all of this.
So you remember the show on Netflix, The Family?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so when I was I put out a documentary on The Family 2 years before Netflix, and no one's seen it because it's on my channel and you can't find it, but it's there if you want to find it. It's also on Take on the World. But in this, there's a clip from Doug Coe, the leader of this family. And he's given his political strategy for, conquest and everything, and how he wants to, go in and it's supposedly a Christian organization. And they network through political means and missions resources to get into different countries and administrations and things like that, because this guy believes that you don't need to share the gospel with everybody. All you have to do is share the gospel with the leaders of the countries, and that it will trickle down. So he believes in this strategy called Jesus plus nothing. So what he's saying is he only listens. He says this in the thing. There's a clip. He says, I don't listen to Paul. I don't listen to Peter. I don't listen to John. I don't listen to anybody. If Jesus didn't say it, I don't care. So he pretty much cancels out the Bible for just the red letters. And he pretty much says that kings are in place because they're divinely chosen, which is true. So he's saying, he goes through and says like that Mao and Nero and Caesar and all these different rulers, even if in Nazi, what's his name, Hitler, he goes through, and Stalin, Hitler, all these guys, he says they are chosen by God. They are God's chosen ones. So he's like, they're in place, so we should use them. And he's not talking about winning them for Jesus. He's just talking about using them. So it's really fascinating how this thing got twisted around and stuff. But even they know that these kings of the earth are set in place by God. And but the enemy still can get in there and twist that junk up. But I would suggest watching the documentary on Netflix. It's very well done if you want some insight on craziness that's going on. And a lot of those guys that are involved in the family and the activities there are right-wing. So there's this massive left-wing conspiracy, which we call the deep state. And then there's a right-wing conspiracy. So the left wing would be the Council on Foreign Relations and all those guys. But on the right side with the Republicans, they're just as dirty. In fact, they're even worse. They're like church kids that have two faces, right? They can play this good Christian church kid when they have to on Sunday mornings and in front of the right person. And then behind the scenes, they're doing all the bad stuff. They're just better at hiding it, right? And the evil side for the Republicans is called the Council on National Policy. And a lot of Jesuits and things cross-pollinate between the Council on Foreign Relations and the Council of National Policy. But yeah, it's a big old crap hole up there.
Sorry about that. I hit the leave studio button a minute ago. No, I did want to add one thing to that, because that was the whole fail-safe aspect of it. I thought it was really interesting, though, that if we share genetic, bloodlines with the the elites, those people at the top of the chain and stuff like that. I feel like it, and they do have genetic targeted viruses that could take people, out by ethnic group or whatever. I think we're seeing a kind of small dose of that with COVID. That's a whole nother topic. But I thought it was really interesting. They couldn't utilize something like that to attack us on a genetic level, because we share the same genetics as they do, as the elites, from the line of David. So I think that's another interesting, that's like the fail safe that God put in there. It's like, you're not going to take my people out without taking your own out, So I think that's really what it's all about. We just have to understand, this whole genetic line. And I think it's really important. It's important in the Bible. I mean, there's so many passages about the genetics. It's the part that everybody skips. The so-and-so begets so-and-so begets so-and-so. As soon as you get to that, you're like, all right, when does this end? I'm going to the next verse. But it's important to God. And I've been pretty adamant about, making sure that we should be making sure it's important too, because, that is our lineage. That's a promise to us. The promise that was given to Abraham is the promise to us as well. And, we have to understand the promises of God. It says we're supposed to remind him of those promises.
Right.
That he wants us to know them. It's not that he doesn't know them. He wants us to know them. And, it's just kind of like a son asking, hey, what did I tell you? Are you listening to me right now?
Well, this goes back to the court's perspective. So, we talked about this in a full episode. If you didn't get to see the Courts of Heaven episode, yeah, I believe we called it the Divine Restraining Orders is what we called the episode. But so some battles are won on the battlefield. Other battles are won in the courtroom. There is specific language in the scripture to let you know what you are doing in each case. So there are terms like the accuser, and Jesus is called the advocate, our advocate. So, when you go to the court, he wants you to take that promise to the court. So you have this promise, like a get out of jail free card, but you cannot get out of jail free unless you present this card, right? You have to present it. You can't just say that you have it. Just like when you get pulled over and they ask you for your license and you're like, I have it. It's just not with me. Well, you get in trouble, right? And then you have to go to court to present that license and show them that you had it, right? So the thing is, God gave us all these promises, and he said, hold me to my word. He says, tell me what I said, right? Remind me, bring to remembrance the words I speak, the words I spoke, or something like that. That's what the verse says. But so when we're being accused of something by the accuser, right? He would say, this, and this. So God, you should bring judgment on him for this. And then we go to the courts and we say, we ask for forgiveness. We ask that Jesus be our advocate, and that the blood sacrifice that was done on Calvary would cover the debt that needs to be paid. And we ask for the blessing that comes as a child of God, and we bring to remembrance what he says about us. And then, that's how we diffuse this, accusation in the court. So it's very much important that we know what the promises are. I mean, if someone told you today, remember what was it? The sweepstakes that everybody, when we were kids, man, what was that sweepstakes where everybody would hope they came
house something
publishers clearing.
Yeah.
Everybody you see those commercials and be like, man, that'd be sweet if they came to my house, right? So what if some dude comes to your house with a whole big entourage and some news cameras and everything, and they say, we found evidence that you are related to this king, and he just died, and you're the next in line for the kingdom. And you're like, what? Like, and money's not an issue anymore. All this stuff is not an issue. And now you are a bloodline heir to the throne. Would that change the way you are? I mean, it would change the way I am. I mean, think about that. That's like a big deal, man. If someone told you you're now a king, I mean, how many times have you prayed that your bills would be paid by the end of the month? To all of a sudden find out that you can say, what bills? I have a butler. Or you could be like, excuse me, could you open the door for me, sir? And you're like, you talk to your butler and they make him do everything. Could you carry this upstairs? Thanks, man. You don't have to do anything anymore. I mean, it's kind of like that, man. We have like all these promises. We are children of the king. We're prophets, priests, and kings. We are heir to everything that the kingdom has, which is a life more abundantly. I mean, and we still don't get it. It's like, it's super hard to let go of stuff when it's, it shouldn't be. Like, hey, let go of your Honda Civic, bro. I'm going to give you this Ferrari. And you're like, I can't, man. I've been driving this car for a long time, dude. It's crazy.
I was listening to a really good a video. It was a 2-part video that I saw anyways, from Zadai. I can't remember his first name. Somebody my mom listens to on a regular basis. She sends me his stuff. So I was interested in it because it was about knowing, it's kind of like the identity crisis from, what's his name? Stuff from Jim Staley. It was kind of like that, that concept. But one of the things he really said that really kind of hit home was that when we became believers, he heals us on a spiritual level to where we're spiritually whole. Our bodies are not like, and all the scars, all the damage, all the baggage, all the shattering that we've dealt with trauma, that's not all fixed. That's a process to fix that. But our spirit is whole and is like united one with, the Holy Spirit. And he said that we're given all of the tools that we could possibly have are open to us at that time. We don't even know it. Like, we don't know how to utilize them. When you're going to, your everyday, modern Christian church, they're not telling you about your spiritual gifts, your spiritual tools, your armor, any of that kind of stuff. And, it's kind of almost become cliche to say, put on the armor of God, like sing a little song, like I'm doing it. I'm putting on the armor of God. But to really understand that God already has given us all of the tools. And he says, if it's in his will, all we have to do is ask for it. And we know that God wants us to be healed, us to be set free from all the bondage that the world has put. It's like the best explanation I can say for it is when Jesus died on the cross, we all had these big gnarly chains around our neck with padlocks on them. And when Jesus was set free, or set us free, when he resurrected, he came and unlocked all of those padlocks. We just don't realize we have these chains on us and that we've been set free. Once we realize we can take these chains off because we're already free from them, that has already been done. We're the only way that we're holding on to those is our own bondage, or because we're comfortable in that sin or that pain or that trauma. So we're just used to carrying this chain around our necks. So I just thought it was really cool that understanding God's promises and understanding all of the things that he's already established for us. All we have to do is just recognize that it's there and the gift has already been given to us. We just have to open it. Like, never say, God, hey, I've got this problem in my life. Can you take it? Will you fix it? Or, I've been struggling with this for a long time. Can you heal this? Can you fix this? And all of this stuff is in the Bible. We just have to know it and go to God and say, hey, remember when you said that you would, you fix, broken people, that you love those who are downtrodden and those who are mourning and all this kind of stuff. I need some of that, like all we have to do is we have to recognize that God has already given us the tools. We just have to ask for them to be utilized and working in our lives. So I think it's really interesting. And that was a good topic to bring up.
I'm going to show you this picture because I posted this on Facebook a couple of days ago, but when I know we talk about spiritual warfare all the time now and how it looks different than maybe you were taught when you were in church or growing up when you were a kid. They used to teach you just to put the armor on
and they never taught you how to wear it appropriately, what you had to do to keep it on, and that you have to do it every day. And then also, they didn't teach you about using the sword, which is your weapon. So a lot of people are just wearing the armor. I mean, if they manage to get it on, it's like Saul's armor. You're pretty much, you can't do anything in it because it doesn't fit you right, right? And I found this picture, man, and instantly when I saw this picture, I thought, this is how people are wearing this helmet of salvation. Because you think you have it on, man, but you're not walking it out at all. And it's not doing you a bit of good, man. And I was like, man, this is crazy. This guy, somebody help him. You know? How many people know people in their life that wear the helmet of salvation like this, man? It's not cool. I just thought that was hilarious, man. I wanted to share that.
So, yeah.
You know, you can tell that we talked for days.
Oh, yeah. But there were so many good things that were like hours and hours and hours of conversation. You know, I think where we're at in our understanding is like at this point, we could expose all kinds of evil and we could expose all kinds of, you know, this, that, or the other and what the enemy's plan is and stuff. But ultimately it goes down to like, this is God's grand plan. Like we're looking at it so finitely. I think the best description that anybody's ever told me is a human's view on the spiritual is like being stuck in the middle of a cornfield. You can only see a few feet in front of you because it's corn all around you. So no matter where you look, you're only getting like this 3-foot view of corn. The demonic realm is like they're standing on a step ladder. They can see kind of the broader spectrum of what the field looks like. But God's perspective is like way, way up there. He sees all of the field, all of the state, all of the country, all of the world. He can see all of it in the future and in the past. So his whole like perspective is completely different than ours. And for a finite being to understand an infinite, you know, the nature of an infinite God is difficult for us at times. I think that's why there's so much division in Christianity, is because some aspects of God we just can't wrap our heads around. Some people more than others. But you know, I think that we should stop limiting God and his ability, and we need to trust him more. When we see more chaos, more panic, more pandemics, more anything that happens, especially if what I think, you know, could be coming here in November, it's going to look really nasty. But we have to understand that all of this was foretold. Everything that we're going to see up until the end of time, we're in these generations that will see it. If not us, then our children. I truly believe that. But we need to be the ones that instill not only in our lives, but the people around us, but in our children, that we need to trust God. The more we see crazy going on, the more we need to lean into God and be under his protection, because he's got this whole plan set up. This whole thing has to come. Jesus says there'll be wars, rumors of wars. There'll be plagues. There'll be famines. But he says, do not be deceived and do not be afraid. Those are two of the things, because if you get into either one of those, you're not in the right mindset. You're not in the walk with God. If you're in deception, then you're not in alignment with God. And if you're in fear of man, biblically it says, fear not man who can destroy the body, but fear God who can destroy both the body and the spirit. So if we're fearing man, we're not fearing God. The reverence for all of that fear that we should have should be going to God and not to anything else. He's the one that has control over this whole thing, and he has to walk this all out. Everyone that he has created and given a position and given a gift, he has to let them walk it out, because the judgment is based on what they utilize their gifts for. And that goes for each and every one of us. Are we using our gifts for the kingdom, to continue to grow the kingdom and to honor God, or are we using it for our flesh? So all of these things have to be, this plan has to be worked out, and God has already set and established it. We get front row seats. Break out the popcorn and praise Jesus, because we get to see it. You know, like there's nothing. Everything that I've studied about Revelation and the end times and eschatology over the last 20 years is going to make every horror, sci-fi, you know, just pick a movie and add it to 3 other movies. It's gonna blow that away. I mean, when you've got angels falling from the heavens and dragons in the sky and the sky rolling back like a scroll and Jesus coming in the clouds and wars in the Middle East and plagues and famines and wormwood and all kinds it's going to look like the craziest, like, the what were some of those movies that they had, Ian, that the whole earth freezes over and stuff. They had all these chaos movies.
2012 was one.
Yeah. It's going to make that look like a PG.
That was.
It's good. Yeah, that 2012 was the one I was thinking of right off the top of my head. That'll make it look like Elsa and Frozen. You know what I mean? Like the return of the Messiah is going to be crazy. It's so much to the point that the people who don't know that it's coming, it says men's hearts will fail them.
Well, listen,
hearts are going to stop.
You ever thought about this? You know how you see these dystopian future movies, man, and they try to depict what's happening in like the reality of it is like they try to put it into reality, but maybe they're trying to show you what spiritual. Maybe it's supposed to be interpreted in the spiritual. What I'm trying to say, so like they may get a vision, and it looks in their dream. It appears that everything's covered in ice, and they try to figure that out, and they're like, "Wow, this must be, a new ice age or whatever." But what does that ice represent? That's the kind of things that God really does speak through dreams. In these, I think about Joseph. In his dreams of the stalks of grain and bowing down, and the bulls that were, the fat bulls eating the skinny bulls or whatever it was. The skinny bulls ate the fat bulls or whatever it was. But it's like super weird, and you're like, man, this is weird. But then when you hear the interpretation, you're like, I get it. So we're listening to these people without discernment, without the Holy Spirit, trying to interpret visions that they might have had, and we're looking at it like, it's going to be these natural disasters and things like that. Maybe it looks a little different. Maybe there's spiritual metaphors there that we're not getting. Yeah.
And I think that's true on many aspects for the secular side. And we saw that with Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had a vision, had a dream. He knew what it was when it was told to him, but he didn't have a full understanding of it by any means, because, biblically it says that the things of spiritual realm, like of God's kingdom, are folly to men who don't have the Holy Spirit. So he had no idea what was really going on. And even when he got the interpretation, we talked about this in the Daniel video, he was like, "Oh, your God is the greatest. He told me how to fix my problem." And so then he goes and builds the gold statue from head to toe when the statue was not described like that in his dream. It was foretelling kingdoms to come after him. And Nebuchadnezzar took that as, well, I'm just going to build my kingdom and it'll last forever. And, he gets another one later that's like, you're going to die. That's pretty much how it is.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah. I like, the secular aspect. I think there's a lot of skewed truth to it, but I think a lot of them look at things with rose-colored glasses, just like we see in, the Christian communities too. We all look at things with our own experiences. And if you get some kind of vision or a muse, that is, spiritually motivated, like demonically motivated, you're just going to take it for what it is. You don't happen to know.
You muted yourself, dude.
Nah, my cord came loose. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
I was just saying that they wouldn't know that it's spiritually motivated. So a lot of times we see things in secular communities and go, wow, this rings some bells of truth, but it's so twisted and worldly, because they have no discernment. And that's another reason why we have to draw nigh to God, and we have to be close with the Holy Spirit and start tuning to hear his voice so we can start discerning truth from fiction. Because I see a lot of fiction in the Christian communities and I see a lot of truth in secular and vice versa. But how do we discern that? We can't without the Holy Spirit. So we have to have that, and we have to know truth. And, we're kind of scattered running around right now. And I think instead of focusing on everything that's going out there in the world, we most definitely need to focus on our walk more than anything else. We can expose stuff all day long. It's not going to save you. I mean, that's pretty much how it is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think so. I wanted to let you guys know about something, because with the world changing like it is, and if a lot of people believe we're in the birth pangs or we're starting the tribulation, whatever your stance is on that, the Middle East is so important right now to understand, because this is the crossroads of humanity. This is where God put everything in place to play out. We are to look to Israel, right? This is the place where we need to watch. This is where everything's going to culminate. And we can't get lost in what's happening in America. You know, we don't even matter, really. I mean, we matter to the extent that we spread the gospel and we have all these resources right now. We need to take advantage of that. But ultimately, prophecy hinges on Israel and the Middle East. So I wanted to say there's during lockdown over there, they've been on lockdown, Israel has, and there's a mission organization called Frontier Alliance International. FAI Studios is their YouTube page, but they just started a new show for the next month and however long it goes. But during quarantine, they can't leave their house. So they've been doing an interview a day, and they call the series the New Middle East, because we're over here in America talking about this great reset and everything happening, and they are missionaries in the Golan Heights, and they're talking about how the Middle East is changing, and they've been there for 25 years. There's a huge network of these guys over there. Some of them are ex-officers in the IDF and very high intelligence guys, and but they've grown up and lived there, and the main guys are Western. They're from the States. So, but they give you a perspective that you don't get from America. I mean, they're there. They know what it's like. They grow up there. They're dedicated to spreading the gospel to the Muslim nations. So they're inside of all those cultures, like the Lebanese and the
Armenians.
The Armenians, yes, and Syria, Iraq, Iran, all these different tribes, and they're familiar with all these covenants from the Old Testament, all the old Abrahamic covenants, and the sons of Jacob, and where everything went wrong, like Ishmael and all these different things, and that's the reason why the Middle East is separated and cut up like it is. But they're seeing great change coming, and we look at the Abrahamic Accords that Trump just put through as, oh no, right? This is the rise of the beast, and this is the Antichrist, the last, what was it? What is the Muslims believe, the last Imam, or whatever that is, that they talk about, the caliphate. But there are scriptures, like, for example, there's this one of the episodes, there's like 6 or 7 episodes now, so you can go watch them, and there's new ones every day. They're interviewing a different person that's involved with the organization, and this guy, I think it's like episode 6 or something, it's called the Great Road, I think is the name of the story. But he tells his testimony on how he became a missionary over there, and how he met his wife, and how God is they're watching prophecy unfold right before their eyes, and his marriage and his personal testimony is an example of this prophecy being fulfilled from Isaiah 19. I'm going to read you this verse because the Great Highway is the name of the episode. It says in Isaiah 19:23, "In that day there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians will go to Egypt, and the Egyptians to Assyria. The Egyptians and the Assyrians will worship together. And in that day Israel will be the third, along with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing on the earth. The Lord Almighty will bless them, saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria, my handiwork, and Israel, my inheritance." Now, it's just fascinating. There's so many different things that we aren't focused on because we're worried about tribulation and stuff. But like the way that they talk about this, and I suggest you go watch this right now, right after we're done, or at least go save it to your watch later list. We need to start focusing on God's promise. And these are covenants of promise. Like he promised that these nations would be, reunited, that he would join all the body
back together in one new man, right? The unity of the body, the fullness of the Gentiles. This is happening, and we're seeing it begin. And it's like a dual thing. So you're seeing the Abrahamic Accords as a negative. It's also a very positive thing that is fulfillment of prophecy. And I think we need to start making ourselves, praying harder, making ourselves look for the prophecy, the good side of the tribulation, what it looks like, because our mandate never changes, no matter if it's good or bad, right? We're always supposed to be sharing the gospel, walking out the kingdom authority, healing the sick, binding up the brokenhearted, setting the captives free, and walking a lifestyle that displays the King appropriately, not taking his name in vain. That never changes, no matter what the circumstance is. So it only helps us if we can start to focus on the good stuff and start to see God moving and being, aware of that. It pumps you up. If all you look at is, how big the enemy is, how big the giants are, right? Then you're going to miss it. So,
yeah, I think another important concept that we need to kind of change our perspective on is we got to stop looking at Israel, the place, as Israel, the people, right? Because we have this idea that like, oh, we're supporting Israel and this and that. We are Israel. Our brothers and sisters in the charismatic, evangelical, HRC, TO, just like there were 10 or 12 tribes, 10 of those tribes scattered, and the 10 or the 2 that were left, those are still there today, right? But the rest of us, we are Israel as well, and we'll be called back to that. And we got to start looking at each other like, our brother or sister from another tribe or whatever. Like we didn't always get, the tribes didn't always get along. They had their disputes, their arguments and whatever, but they still knew they were family. And we have to have that perspective and that mindset too, because there are 12 gates in the new kingdom that's coming back, and we'll be associated with one of those. It's not going to be, there's not 330,000 gates and everybody's right. You know what I mean? There's 2 sticks, and we're either of the Gentile messianic believers or the Hebrew messianic believers, and that's all that makes it to the end and to the millennial kingdom. So we got to start looking at Israel as us and as our neighbors and our brothers and sisters. And we got to start treating them like they're Israel. Like if you're full on 100% supporting Israel, the state, well, and I'm, seeing you on there bickering and with your Christian brothers and sisters, you're doing it wrong. One of the things that God really pushed me to read, and I highly suggest that everybody who's listening, go read First John. We read it at Sukkot. On one of the nights we got to sit down and we went all over. It's a short book, but it's a very, very hard hitting, and it's very to the point. It says things like, if you claim to be a Christian and you don't love your brothers and sisters, well, then you're a liar. I mean, it's very, very, very hard hitting. And this is, coming from people who walked with Jesus, who saw what Jesus was teaching. And that's literally how it starts out. We come to testify. We walked with Jesus. We saw him. And here's the hard truth. And he really goes into it. I highly suggest that everybody read that. But we have to start taking a perspective change and viewing our brothers and sisters in a proper manner, because we are gauged and measured on a measuring stick of how we measure others. And trust me, I know nobody's theology is correct. And if you're judging other Christians by their theology, God's going to measure you by that stick as well. So we really have to be on point and careful, and we need to be loving not only our brothers and sisters, but our enemies and prayer and stuff like that. We never know, God sees the whole person's life. We never know when our enemy can become our brother or sister. And I don't know how much I can stress that, but it's super important that we get our hearts right. Lord's Prayer says we have to forgive those, who have done things against us, or we won't be forgiven. So we really got to get on top of that stuff. We got to get our houses correct first before we start worrying about others. And with everything that's coming and happening, like, I think that we should really focus on our walks, like super strong over anything else going on right now. Like I said, we can expose all kinds of stuff, but the only thing I keep hearing from God is we got to continue to keep building our walks and our closeness with him, because that's all it's going to matter. I mean, all of the other craziness, it means nothing. The only thing that really matters in the long run is our relationship with the Father and having that relationship. I'm seeing a lot of people that claim discernment, claim a lot of things. Ducky from Disputed Lands, or DNG, if you guys know him, he and I went 2 or 3 days talking about relationship and seeing the lack thereof, the lack of fruit. And you can clearly point out the people that don't have the relationship. And so it's super important that we are having that, because it could save our life, and it's definitely going to save our, our spirit, in eternity. So what do you got, Ian?
Well, I was just thinking about something that I don't know why I forgot to tell you about this, man. So this is crazy. This is a good way to end it tonight. This happened to me today, and I don't know, it was so crazy at the time when it happened. I was, I don't know why I forgot about it until now. Wait till I tell you what happened. So anyways, I was listening to some things today, and I was praying about vision, and I was praying about, after Sukkot, you give a first fruit. It's the harvest time. You give a tithe on your first fruits. And I was just praying about what God wanted me to do, where he wanted me to tithe that to sow into a ministry, right? And I was thinking about some vision stuff for myself and asking God to show me or to make clear what's happening now with this new year, direction wise, where should I be focused? And big changes are coming. That's all I can feel in my spirit, but I don't know what they are. And I was just praying for clarity, praying for peace about certain decisions that I have to make, and I'm sitting in the car and I'm just praying this stuff. No big deal, right? Just normal day. I'm not, it's nothing crazy. I'm just praying, and I'm like, I felt like I should sow into a ministry that is actually doing something in Israel. Like, not one that's collecting funds for trips to Israel or, I don't know. I just felt like I should find a ministry that's actively involved in spreading the gospel in Israel, right? Stationed in Israel. Anyways, I'm praying about this stuff, man. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, God, I don't know what's going down, but whatever you want me to do, I want to do it. Help me to have the boldness and the courage to stand up and do whatever it is you want me to do. Literally, I say that. And I'm in the parking lot of a Walmart, okay? A falcon lands on my car mirror and stares at me through my window. All right, I'm like, it scared the crap out of me, to be honest with you, man. I'm like, amen. Oh my God. It was like right there, dude. And it just looked at me for a second and then flew away. What the heck was that? So then I look up, what does a falcon mean? Because it just comes to my mind. I'm like, that was the strangest thing ever. And I don't usually look up omens or whatever, right? I just thought I should look up and see what a falcon means. Because I don't think there's supposed to be falcons flying around where I live in Walmart's parking lot. I don't know. I could be wrong. But anyways, I look it up, and it stands for victory and wisdom and protection of vision. So I was like, oh, okay. I took that as like an answer to prayer or like a sign, you know what I mean? And we talked last week about Gideon and his fleeces and everything. And I told everybody that I freaking throw out fleeces for everything, dude. I'm like doubting Thomas. I shouldn't be, but I'm always like, yeah, you're going to have to show me something special because I'm having a real hard time with this. But, that's like, I don't know, man. I used to get convicted, or I used to feel ashamed that I threw out fleeces and tested God so much. But, man, I don't think there's anything wrong with doubting Thomas, man, to be honest with you. I mean, he's got like a bad rap because he's the only one that didn't believe it right away, But, dude, a guy just came back from the dead, supposedly, and he walked through a wall, all that stuff. And you're just like, wait, what? You're all hiding in the upper room because you're about to get killed, you think. And this dude shows up. It would be like the craziest thing ever. And if you didn't say, I don't know if I believe this, man, like, I'm going to have to touch you. You know what I mean? It's like, it seems like it's a natural thing. He's the only guy that did that. I just feel like
I liked how Gideon kept doing that when we were reading about Judges, man. It's like Gideon was like, okay, God, if this is from you, I'm gonna put some wool down here. Now let it be wet and the ground be. And he's like, wait a second, I want to make sure this is you, God. So next time, make the wool be dry and the ground be wet. Yeah, I love that, man.
No, he did it over and over. It wasn't just 2 times. It was like a bunch, man. He was just like, all right, you know. Yeah. And then he got, then when God, he even believed God and God told him what to do. He's like, yeah, I'm going to have to do that at night.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that this day, God.
Those guys are going to kill me if they see me in the day. And then he gets to the, you can see like the relationship building up, because then you get to the end of it and God gives him the option. He's like, okay, look, I know you're not going to fully believe me. So if you don't believe me, go down to the camp and listen to what the guys have to say. They got a vision. I already got it set up for you.
Yeah, he does. See, God knows who you are. He makes you the way you are, man. And it's like, I have 5 children. They're all different, and they all need to be corrected, right? I have to do different things for each kid, because some of them don't respond to the normal punishments, right? So you can't, like my son, if you spank him, he thinks it's hilarious. I don't know what the deal is. I mean, no matter how hard it is, he cries through it. And you're just like, it defeats me. I'm like, this should not be. So, but I mean, you have to find a way to reach these kids to get them to pay attention to what you're saying. That you're not telling them something just to be mean. You're telling them something because you're trying to protect them and you're trying to lead them into success, right? So that's the thing. It's like God he has all these crazy kids, and he does each one of us different. So don't be ashamed of how it is that you find, you find.
So you got the falcon, and you figured out what it meant. So what'd you decide?
I mean, there wasn't nothing to decide. I just about my thing, and now I know that I'm going to have to now see, like, I never once said to God, if this is what you want, make a falcon land on my car. That seems crazy. I've never even, but what's really funny is yesterday when that information came out about the Benghazi thing, the whistleblower guy, that's the intelligence
falconer.
For falconer, and he's wearing falcon pajamas, bro. I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, and I'm just going to say that I am taking this in a good way. I'm not going to be like, I don't know if falcon can mean something bad, but I'm not even going to look it up because I don't want to know. I don't want to know. So if you know something about falcons that I don't know, please don't tell me, because I am taking this positive. And it was confirmation that I just feel confident that I hear from the Lord and he tells me where to go, and I do it to the best of my ability, and he's going to take care of me. That's it. That's all I can hope for.
I can tell you we can't eat them. They're predators. So there's that.
We can't eat them.
Yeah, they wouldn't be clean. They're a predator.
You wouldn't catch them. This is about a falcon, but this one time I was being neighborly. I'm over at my neighbor's house. Well, this was years ago. I don't have any neighbors now, but I'm over at his house, and I'm in the backyard. We're building a kid's playground swing set thing, and we're just talking, and it's all quiet. It's like a quiet spring morning, and this huge, sounded like a cannon, man. It was like boom, and we jumped, and we look over towards his house, and there's bird feathers everywhere, man. And what had happened was a pigeon was flying, and a hawk smashed it into the side of his house. So he grabbed it with his feet, smashed it into the house, and the freaking bird disintegrated. It seemed like, dude, there's so many feathers. You're like, holy crap. And we see the thing flying off with it. And I'm like, man, that was awesome. I wish we could have actually seen the impact, but we saw the thing pick it up off the ground and take off. He legit just blasted it into the side of the house. It was loud, dude. That was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I wouldn't try to eat one of those birds. No way.
All right, so we're running out. We're coming to the end of our show tonight, but we did have some things we wanted to talk about. Did you want to discuss about some of the stuff we got coming up? So we haven't set it all in stone, but we've got some new things coming.
Yeah, we got. So we want your help. First of all, we want to get the podcast circulating. We're going to be doing some shows, some interviews specifically for the podcast. We know that if you guys are watching this show, you're probably used to watching stuff on YouTube. That's fine. But we ask that you go and download or at least subscribe to the podcast version, because you're going to get some special interviews with certain people, and there'll be some fun shows that we're going to do, and we're only going to put it on the podcast. We're really trying to push that. And I did want to tell you guys something. Check this out. So we have maybe, we just have, there's only maybe 4 weeks of podcast out right now. And here's some of the countries that we've reached already. This is kind of amazing when you think about it. I mean, censorship and everything. When I saw the analytics on this, it pumped me up. All right. And so we have 8 countries that we're in right now: United States, Germany, Canada, Norway, Bahrain, the Netherlands, France, and Antigua and Barbuda. I was blown away by that. I'm like, wow, that's sweet, dude. We are, you know what I mean? Like, there's people across the world listening to this. That's amazing.
Everybody's wanting links to where they can get the podcast. So they want us to put it up on the Facebook and stuff like that.
Hey, listen, you go, it's already linked everywhere. Every single show that we put up has it linked in the description. If you go to the description of this video right now on YouTube, all the links for this stuff's there. So you go and you'll see the podcast link and everything. But we're planning a show in the future, and we don't yet have a date for it. But it's a big Q&A panel show. So what we need you guys to do is let us know who your top 5 favorite guests are, and this will go up until we do this show. I mean, when we announce a date, we'll probably cut off the panel nominees and stuff, but maybe are you peeking around it? Yeah, put your top 5. I'm going to post this picture up on the Facebook page. If there's a link, I believe, to the Facebook group in the description as well. The SITREP Resistance group on Facebook. If you would go over there and join that group, you'll get all the updates and everything on there. But I'm going to post that picture up. And in the comments, you can put your top 5 favorite guests that we've had on this year up until we take that post.
Try to do it in the actual comment section, because in the chat, we'll never see it when we go back through. We'd have to watch the whole video to see everybody's comments. So when you back out of the video or out of the comments, go down to the comment section of the video, or go to the Facebook page or something like that and leave the comments so we can get it popped up there.
I'll post it right after this, so you have time to go over and in the description, find the link, click on it, go over to Facebook, join the group, and I'll post that post right away so you guys can start uploading your comments to it. But yeah, we want to do a good show with a big panel, and you guys can submit questions when we get along with who you want on there and all that stuff. We want you guys to be able to ask questions and get a chance to get some answers from people that. What was that, man?
That's my wife's cooking something. That's the timer for the show. We're done. No.
We actually, the house is on fire. Obviously, that happened before.
So yeah, we want it to be guests we've already had, because somebody we can get in contact with them. Well, we love suggestions for people we could get on the show that we haven't already. So that's always, just try to distinguish between the two. We're also looking at doing short half-an-hour shows on like sometime in the week. We're trying to work out all the logistics for it, but on like Facebook, where we do a short Q&A, 30 minutes, where we just kind of answer questions and stuff like that about the previous week's show. So we're going to try to work out when we can do that, where it's still relevant within a day or two of the actual show itself. But we want more interaction. One of the things we noticed when we were doing the Sukkot, like around the fire, we loved the interaction with people talking and asking us questions and really picking our brains about stuff, because we'll talk circles about the same things over and over again, because it's stuff we're trying to hash out our theories and stuff like that. But we love when you guys bring questions to the table, maybe stuff that we may not think about or that we haven't run across yet. So that's something we're looking at as well. And then we want to start loading all of our previous episodes up before the end of the year. So we want to start doing a SITREP rewind, and we're going to figure out a day for that where we can go back, and we're going to do episodes 1 through 38, loaded up and live on Facebook. So we're just trying to make sure we're hitting every avenue possible for this before the end of the year. So.
Yeah. So you have 2 things you should do tonight. Go click the link for the podcast and subscribe. I don't care whether you download or not, just subscribe so that you have access to it if we go away. And also we're going to be putting some exclusive material on the podcast. The other thing is go over and join the Facebook page. And that way you can contribute to this panel show. Put your comments in there. Also, hit the like button. Subscribe to our backup channel. Do all these things. This helps. Share this with a friend. Share previous episodes with a friend. If you've seen some of the other shows, we have some awesome topics back in the day that we will revisit in the recast episodes. But if you haven't been watching us since the beginning, go back and watch some of those other shows. They're on a playlist. When you join the Facebook group, it's linked. It's the first link. It's pinned there, the playlist. So
Marla asked what the guy's name from the local church. That was Elijah Hale, if that's the one she's talking about, the guy with the long black curly hair.
And also it was my guy too.
Oh yeah, that's right. You did have one too.
Yeah. And drawing a blank.
What's the Facebook name? It's SITREP Resistance. If you just type that in the search bar in Facebook, it's all our stuff. I mean,
listen, guys, it shouldn't be this difficult. If you go to the for the YouTube channel, you're watching YouTube right now. You're in the comments, right? Click description where it tells you what the episode's about. Scroll to the bottom, and all the links are there. That's literally, you don't have to look for anything. It's right there. Just click it. We made it easy.
You can't make it easy, man. You got to make it difficult.
Well, it's coded. You have to use the Q map. But
all right. Well, we're running over a little bit tonight. Got anything else you want to add, Ian?
No, man. No, dude. I'm sleepy.
I know. I gotta work in the morning. I'm not having.
Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like working, guys. Really don't like it.
No, we just need to Sukkot 365 days a year, except your wife wouldn't be able to handle it.
Man, I can't wait until
the millennial reign.
Well, we're full-time. When we're full-time ministry, whatever that looks like, man, whether it's tribulation or what, man, when we're full-time ministry, it's going to be sweet. We won't have to make up, I'm doing the night shift.
No, because you know how it works. God will have you do something you don't want to do. So we'll be ministering at 5 o'clock in the morning.
He changes your heart. He makes you enjoy it. So
there'll be no sleeping in on Jesus's time. You don't get smoke breaks or bathroom breaks.
He's a good father. All right, guys, we love you. Thanks for joining us. Do your homework. And we'll see you next week.
Be blessed, guys.